This was the last one I did last night after the day of, which started with that one, which is the 3 videos about that one. It's quite bright, isn't it? I don't quite know whether there's too much light on this, you know. It looks very, very washed out, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah, so it started with that one, which was talking about not drawing lines around things. And I thought about doing one where I actually drew lines around and then showed you what the difference is between, because someone mentioned about it being charcoal that was in that instance, it was the thing that allowed you to make the marks, and it is the charcoal that allows you to do that, but it's a state of mind thing, it's not a determination thing. So the idea that you should draw lines around things regardless of the medium and then colour it in is what I was talking about. So the massive skill difference. The reason why a lot of people would struggle with making portraits is because of that skill level. You know, the outline thing. And this, in a way, I think is this last night's rapid. Really, as you can tell how rapid it was. Drawing is that regardless of the charcoal. I mean, I'm obviously exploiting what charcoal does, this sort of thing. You probably can't see that on there, but anyway, this kind of blurring thing, just because I can't be bothered to make it all grey, so a lot of the times when I do things, it's out of an impatience. I've told you this before, the lazy impatience thing. It's not necessarily a considered thing. very little is considered, which is how it should be. I mean, I don't think art is a consideration. It's a response to the world. When it becomes consideration, it's far too complicated for me. But yeah, so which is kind of what I'm going to talk about with the way, doing it your way thing. I think the thing is that people, and I've seen it this morning, people come at making portraits, and primarily this is the issue, right? Portraits are copies of people's faces. That's the sort of the starting point for many people. It's a copy of someone's face, and many people don't get past that because they get embroiled within the requirements to do that. Whether it's initially about the drawing side of things and getting things in the right place, and then it's into the the mechanics of the medium and all the rest of it. So they'll never get past that idea that it's a copy of a face. It'll always be a copy of a face and nothing more. And people get really good at copying faces. That's the thing. But the problem is that a response to another human, a subject, a thing in general, art is a response to whatever it is that moves you to paint it. The problem is that if you don't recognise that the portraits will always be a reproduction of reality, and that is a hard road to take. It's like it's why people fall off, sort of. And then initially you can see how it triggers. Somebody does a portrait and the eyes are wonky, and the shape of the thing's not right, and all of a sudden, because comparing that to reality, it doesn't look real. All of a sudden, people go off on this tangent of knowledge and truth and ways of doing it, sort of the rules, in search of the answers. But the answers were always there in the first place. The answer is simply you've got to address the way you look at making a portrait. So it's a difficult thing. I don't know how you can arrive at it without some kind of cleansing. I've talked about the thing before about the reset thing of your perception of what portraits are and should be, and I think there's got to be some of that. You've got to, it's a sort of in a way, it's kind of an intellectual thing as much as it is a, sort of creative thing. You've got to be aware of the fact that portraits manifest in many ways. Whether it's a Rembrandt or a Picasso, they're equally valid portraits. So, but they arrived. I mean, Rembrandt, I suppose, and anybody that did the sort of the classical realism stuff was really a product of an approach that had been handed down, as all of them are, handed down for probably, I don't know if it would have been centuries, if it had been, probably if it was Rembrandt, and but whereas Picasso was in a way a construct, when it became, with the Weeping Woman and all that sort of stuff, is it equally as contrived as if it was a Rembrandt, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that in both cases, fantastic portraits. I don't really care one way or the other. But the most important thing I care about is that I express myself, and I do it my way, regardless of how it kind of turns out. I'm not, this is not necessarily a good example, but doing this, for instance, is just one way that I made a portrait. That's it. Just as these charcoals or this sort of thing. It's just my way of making a portrait. So that's it. There's not really a right or wrong. I don't have any kind of standard to what I'm going to do. It's just going to be my way. But the hardest thing is to maintain your way. When you do it for the first time, or you start making portraits, and you've done it for a while, you're always going to be looking at other people's portraits. I look at other people's portraits now. There's not a day goes by without it popping up on my stream that some charcoal artist's portraits pop up, and it's inevitable. You can't help but see other people's drawings or other people's work. And if you're susceptible to, I'm going to draw this guy, by the way. If you're susceptible to I don't know, if you're susceptible to the pressures of this is how it's done, not the way you're doing it, if you're susceptible to that because for some reason you have this perception that other people know better than you, which in sort of common sense terms, I suppose they do, and people would say, oh, he knows better than me about making portraits, therefore, because his portraits are realistic or whatever it is, or his portraits are acclaimed, which is the big one, therefore he must be good. So it's inevitable you're going to feel that pressure. But it's a difficult one because there's so many factors that I think that when I was doing this, when I started doing this, it was nobody's ever going to see this. I'm going to do it for myself. It's about me. It's not about anybody else. And it's that kind of it's not secrecy, but it's that kind of self. Taking yourself away from the pressures, removing the possibilities of other people's opinions mattering and all that sort of thing, and it was, I don't know, I can understand, these kids that go sort of get in the bedrooms and just draw and create fantasy and all that. I can understand that, and in a way that's kind of what I did, albeit just drawing faces. It wasn't kind of an escape in reality. I was still drawing faces, but that's kind of what I did, and that in a way, coupled with the damage that was done because I'd followed the usual routes that people said you should follow, and because I knew no better. So those things coupled together made my approach work, but it still didn't. It didn't really fix the need to do it like somebody else. It didn't really fix that, because it stayed, and I think it may well be something to do with trying to teach people, trying to sort of spread the word, that I in some way had to make it digestible, comprehensible. The thing about, if you're going to teach something, you want the student to be able to comprehend it, and a lot of teachers there's a supposition that people will understand it, will comprehend what they're talking about, and that's a big problem for me. So I did try to make it comprehensible, so I'd relate it to the more traditional approach, but that, as I said, infected me and my determination. And I look at the reason why I'm saying this is because when I look at the early portraits, the portraits which became, before I started analysing it, and they were more like this, they were more like this kind of spontaneous, just I didn't give too much regard for things, sort of. This is not about trying to draw every curl. This is about telling you that he's got curly hair. That's what it was about. And then, as I say, as it evolved, it became more about the drawing the curly hair, and because that's what people want and that's what people understand. But me trying to explain that really you can already draw, you just don't know it. It's that kind of thinking. But trying to explain that sounds silly. People, yeah. I mean, I used to say things like, the portrait already exists. You just got to try and find it. That's the kind of thinking I was trying with people to see if they could understand that it really is the case. This idea of in some way you can create the illusion of creativity by following rules, was for me was the problem. I think that, and it still is, this idea that just by following these rules you will create something, and it will be just like what everybody else does. That's the thing. Follow these rules and it'll be exactly the same as me. I said this the other day, and I was rambling on about our people who teach, people like me, who try and teach people, and all they're doing is saying, draw like me. That's all they're doing, and that's not the point. I think that being creative is like a kid in a sweet shop. Really, there's so many things that you can do, and the dilemma is that it isn't like real life. It doesn't conform to real life. It doesn't. The rules aren't the same. This everybody's this standard. Everybody's this good. Everybody should do it this way. It doesn't comply to all those sort of things. So there's a room full of people that are dancing different dances. Basically, that's what we're all dancing. Some are doing the Paso Doble. I've been watching Strictly, by the way. So Paso Doble, and some are doing a jive, and but we're all dancing. You know what I mean? We're all dancing. It's just we're all dancing different dances. So, but this thing of but that kind of thinking is really difficult to put across. It's the thing that's going to really release people and allow them to be the artists they can be. But the comprehending that, getting your head around that is difficult because I'm too busy. How do I draw eyes again? That's what I mean. I'm too busy worrying about that. Hang on a minute. We're not. It's just not. It's a different language, you know. So if it's like if it is the how do I draw eyes and get them in the right place, and how do I create tones and all the rest of it? If it is all that stuff, then you're probably past salvation. You're probably not. You're beyond it. You're beyond. No, there's no hope for you basically because you're locked into a methodology, a way of thinking that is probably not your fault. It's just the way that people have programmed you to think like that. Art is like that. You know, that's being creative. Is this? This is being creative, not what you're doing. This, this is this, and then all of a sudden it's like, you just one day. I mean, some people do, and some people talk to me about it and say, you know, I'd love to, and then they're really capable artists in the traditional sense, and I'd just love to be able to be freer and looser with my style and just go for it, you know, but they can't because their programming has been such that they're so embedded within the tradition of doing it that they can't possibly do anything else. You know, they can't even think in a different way. It seems incomprehensible to them to be able to think in a different way other than what they've been taught. So, but that's the thing. It's like the danger is that, and as I said before, only with a reset, I suppose, could you do it. I mean, my reset was the 30-year break, so that's nobody should do that. That's the reason why I'm kind of quite. I said the other day about I'm quite determined and vocal about this stuff. Is because I don't want anybody else to not do it for 30 years, because that's a life, isn't it? It's a waste of a life, isn't it? I'm not saying that everybody could do it or should do it. I'm just saying that if you can do it and then you don't do it, you may have only been put on this earth to do that, and yet for 30 years you didn't, and that's sad, isn't it? I mean, that's the truth of it. It's just so sad. So that's the reason why I'm quite vocal about it, is because I don't want anybody else to suffer that. I'll go through that. But yeah, this thing of doing it your way, I think that the first thing is you got to know that's the case. That the whatever, however it manifests in the first instance, it's not really. It may well be, you know, if you rise in the wrong place and all that sort of thing, and we're not talking about we're trying to create Picasso or anything like that. This is not a conscious decision to draw in a particular way. This is just how it manifests. The first thing you've got to do really is you've got to look at why you think it's wrong. That, you know, if your intention is genuinely to capture a life force, then you've got to say, well, why didn't I capture that life force? What do I feel is wrong with it? If it is a mechanical thing, if it is the fact that, you know, if you're genuine, and it is the fact that you want to copy faces, then you've got to go off and you've got to learn how to copy faces. You can't get around that. But if it's just a case of whatever happens, this me, I'm happy with it. This is how I respond to someone's entity, to someone's persona. This is how I do it. If you can do that, then you're probably going to make great portraits. They may not look like everybody else's portraits, but you're probably going to make pure, honest, genuine portraits, and that is probably where you want to be if you're serious about this. If you're not serious about it, if you want to I want to be really good at copying faces, then just go off and do that. I've got no problems with that. I think as long as you're honest about it, then do it. That's how it should be. But like I say, a lot of people just come to it and really with no proper guidance. Well, that's me. Again, that's the reason why I'm like I am, because nobody said to me, well, you can do all this. You can do all the. I could do all the mechanical stuff. I'd been doing it since I was 14, and I could be technical with things, and I was quite willing to, sort of spend time on things. But nobody said to you, you're not making the best of your potential, if you like. Think of it like this. No one said that. And the occasions when, because this is the thing, you know yourself, I was 14 and going, I've told you before about the bus rides with my friends who wore the fedora, the guy that, I tell you, there was these guys at art college were such an influence on me for years afterwards. So I was very impressionable, as we all were at that age, but nobody said. When I went and did the technical illustration thing, the guy that taught the course, he worked at the railway, and he said that the reason why he did it was because he'd done it. He taught himself to be a technical illustrator for the railway. So he started off as a draftsman, drafting out the railway lines, and then it evolved into being a technical illustrator, sort of carriages and all that kind of stuff. And he went and did the course and taught the course, so he could confirm to himself that he knew what he was doing. It's sort of like me, I suppose, doing this now. He was trying to say, well, was all these years I spent doing it, was it worth it? Or have I been wasting my time? And but as I said, he didn't say to me, not that he would, because he wasn't an artist. He was an illustrator, technical illustrator. He's not just an illustrator. But him or anybody on the course that I was on never said to me, you just need to think about it. I went and did. This is a sort of a relevant story, I suppose. Sheffield University asked me to be a mentor. Me and the missus did it, and I went on this day of mentorship to mentor these graphic designers, and this one girl came and showed me a folder, and she was an amazing illustrator. I mean, a really good illustrator. She just illustrated her designs, and I said to her, "You're an illustrator. You're not a graphic designer." But the tutor didn't like that at all. I mean, obviously, because they should have said it to her, not me. But that's the problem. See, and I would have had that. No one would have said to me, you're an illustrator or you're a painter or whatever. You're not a graphic designer. No one would have said that to me. That's how it is. That's how some of these college. I mean, the bums on seats is what it's about. So they're not really going to start chucking people off the courses. We had at De Montfort, it was a modular course. So there were lots of people that were doing lots of different things would converge on the courses that we were delivering, art direction and marketing, and so they, you would get people that were following different paths, but wanting to use the tools that we had, or learn how to use the tools that we had. But so there was, in a way, people were on the right courses, but they were just, as I say, colliding with us. But this girl was not. She was on a graphic design course, and she was pushed towards that because the tutors needed, to fill the seats. But this idea of being told to do it this way or to follow a different path, no, I didn't get any of that. So this is the thing with when we're doing this, when and it's harder as well because and I say this all the time, but there is more than one way to skin a cat. So if your way doesn't look like somebody else's way. But it still, nevertheless, is able to capture the essence of that individual. It's still a valid solution, still a valid way of doing it. But people have this thing that if it doesn't look real straight away, then there's something wrong with it, and the attempt to make it look real is often the problem. They start from a point of view of it's going to be a real portrait, it's going to look photographic, it's going to look exactly as the face looks. They start from that point, and all the pressures that brings, because that's really hard to do. The people that can do it have spent a long time learning how to do that. Learning all the procedures. And you're suddenly going to start doing that, and it's not going to happen, is it? So, but the thing about it is, and I don't see it that often. I don't see people's honest response. Jackson makes portraits, and his response comes. You see, the thing with Jackson is that he's an experienced in. I taught him to draw before he went to school, basically, but he didn't do realism at uni, and it was because it was frowned upon. So he couldn't paint anything real because he wouldn't have got his degree. So, but he has that skill. But nevertheless, he spends his time creating surrealistic paintings. So he comes from that point of view where it doesn't have to be real, because in his world, realism is not it's kind of a secondary factor. It's about what's going on in this image, and so when he makes portraits and they're remotely realistic, they have a real honest response kind of element to them, and that's kind of where we all should be. Obviously he has drafting skills, he has the ability to make marks and understand about colours and composition and all the rest of it, but that's just an acquired thing. We all get those things. They all come to us the more we do it, and the more we enjoy doing it, the more we do it, and the more we do it, the better we get. And it's just sort of a self-fulfilling thing. But you won't get better at doing something your way if you're trying to do it somebody else's way. You'll just get better at doing it their way. And to a lot of people, that's all that's wanted. So I get that there are people that just want to be able to do it like Sargent. There are people that just want that, and that's fine. But it's not. It doesn't make them any better than you or any better than me. It's just that's how they do it. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But that's the sort of general approach to all this, is that we're going to do it like somebody else until I can find my way of doing it myself. This is the thing about style. People think that style is a thing that you decide to do. Style is a consequence of your intention. It just happens. It just finds you. But it's not. It can't be a contrivance. You can't. That's what I was talking about with the oil pastel things I did the other week, which was this. We're going to contrive a style, and they're shallow representations, and they're nothing. It just doesn't mean anything to me. I really don't like them at all. I didn't like doing them for two reasons. One was that I don't like mediums that make you think. The medium was demanding of me something, and I don't like that. I want the medium to get out of the way while I'm creating. So it has to be something that's unobtrusive, but the oil pastels are very obtrusive. They are an obstacle. Just to get them out of the blooming packet is an obstacle for me. But they are too demanding for me. And but that plus the fact that I constructed the things, I even drew them before I coloured them in, which is a kind of contradiction to me. It's the grisaille issue. I always thought grisaille was doing things twice. I didn't realise that it was a a process that you went through to establish the tonal values. But for me, I just thought they were drawing it twice. That's what it was, like painting twice. And but as I said, it's a difficult thing to actually assess your efforts, your creative efforts in an objective kind of way, to say that, yeah, but that's it may look like a Picasso, it may look like a Sargent, but regardless of that, that's my voice, that's my own response to a face, and that's a difficult thing, and assess it based on that as well. That's a real difficult thing to do, particularly if you're starting out. If you haven't started out and you're able to, you've been in it for a while and you're able to copy the style of a Sargent, you will never question it in a way to say, well, is that my style? Because you'll always be biased towards it looks like a Sargent. Oh, that's good enough then. It's good enough. That's an established benchmark. I'll live with that. I'll be happy with that. But as I said, it's doing it your way is especially from a point of view of just starting out, is a real difficult thing to get your head around. It's it's all right. I'm just hold my breath while the first thing you do when you start is you look around at what other people are doing, I think, and then the kind of standards are set. Your targets are, you've lined up your targets, and you start to do this in a way that, in respect to how other people do it, and again, that's the problem, especially if you're starting out, because I did it when I started looking at charcoal, and some people like, say, Oliver Sin or Zin Lim, and people that could do that, and that's frightening to see that, and obviously they've spent decades doing it, so it's not good to make those kind of assessments of where and how you should do this, and where you should be with it and how you should do it. It's not good. That it doesn't help to see great masters doing it, because you don't see the amount of work it took for them to get to where they are, and if they're going to be the yardstick of your attempts, then you come back in 50 years or whatever it took them to do it. But as I said, I struggle with this. When people show me their work, there's if I can see honesty in it, and regardless of its sort of accuracy, if I can see honesty, that's all I want to see. I don't want to see attempts at trying to make it realistic, or attempts at copying a style, or the usual sort of things that people do. Not really interested in that. I don't think that's it's a good thing. People don't understand what they're doing, and obviously it shows in their work. The fact that they're showing me in the first place is irrelevant anyway. Who am I? I don't profess to be any kind of expert in this. I just know how it worked out for me, and what I like about what I do. So I like the way that things turn out. I like it when this happens. That kind of creative force that manifests like that. That can never be undone. The level of of my world, the impact on my world with that is insurmountable. And that's it. That's the true value of it. I don't care if somebody else likes it or if somebody else wants to buy it or whatever. I care that impacts on my life. And I leave the studio, like last night, having done that, leave the studio with a kind of untouchable armour, regardless of what people are saying about it. I mean, somebody actually, which was the best compliment that I've ever had on that drawing. They described that person's persona. They started by saying they wanted to marry that man, and then they went on to describe his persona. That in itself, as a portrait artist, that is probably the ultimate, that you conveyed a persona in such a way that person can literally recreate and describe that personality. That's one hell of a portrait if it can do that. And that ultimately is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to capture the essence of someone. You can see it in his eye as with these marks that are quite undeliberate marks. They are me trying to replicate things, but they're not necessarily that accurate. As you can see, there's lots of inaccuracies in it, but that's not part of why I'm doing this. I'm not trying to make an accurate copy of it. I'm trying to convey this guy's personality, and I think that's beyond doing it your way. I think the doing it your way thing you could probably just stop it at the practical side of things, just the doing things in order to understand your outcome, because that's the thing. This is not your way. This is my way, right? And this is how I look at it, and this is how I see it, and this is my response. That's where you need to be. You can't be in a way where this is why comparison's really bad, and yet we've got game shows on the telly. I don't get that. Comparison's really bad for artists, and yet what we're getting on the TV, a game show that says this is good and this is bad, this is a winner and this is a loser, and despite what a friend of mine did it and he said, oh, it's the best thing I ever did and all that, despite that, it's still not a good thing. I mean, I completely despise the competition of artists. I think that competitions are for athletes, not for artists. The idea that we pit one artist against another, and in some way somebody decides, the judges should be ashamed. They don't get what this is about, obviously, but that's not, it's there all the time. So as you start out doing this, and you'll start sort of drawing your first portraits, and their eyes are all wonky and they don't look quite right, and the first thing you do is compare it with somebody else. You're probably going to compare it with the original, the image or the model, and that's going to be your yardstick. And forever, comparing it physically is fine, but comparing it emotionally is probably the best way to look at a portrait. So if you create a portrait of somebody, you want them to say, oh, it feels like so and so. You don't want to say, oh, it looks like it. You want them to say, yeah, it looks like him, but it also feels like. That's the most important thing you can do. When I did the portrait of the lady that passed, that's exactly what the guy said. It doesn't just look like it feels like. And that's the aim of any portrait. It's got to feel like its subject, no matter whether the eyes are in the right place or not. It's sort of. I'm sure that the Weeping Woman still felt like the Weeping Woman. Although I think that Picasso's images were slight contrivances, but nevertheless, they are still representations of what he supposedly saw and felt, and they should be. But as I said, the first thing you're going to do is compare. That's the first thing you're going to do. And then you've got classes. You've got classes full of people. I've been in classes where there are people that just go around and compare their work to somebody else's, and the other one where they're ashamed of what they've done. oh, you're so much better than me. Oh, look at that. I wish I could. Oh, how do you do that? And it's all that kind of thing. And that's, there's people who teach these courses don't teach them. They don't. They just give them a few materials and probably a model and a bit of, you need to mix it this way, or you need to hold the brush like this, or a bit of that kind of stuff. And it's not helping anybody. That's the thing. It's not helping anybody properly. But as I said, it's a difficult one. I as you can tell, I have problems getting this across, because at the end of the day, people are always going to say that it has to be like this. A portrait has to be like this. They're always going to say and use examples. Portraits probably lean more towards realism than most things, and that's where most people start, with realism, and then get locked into the concept of portraits that can only be realistic. And so execution is the primary driver behind all of it. They learn to execute. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. This is a difficult one for me to sort of get across. I just want to liberate people, but and remove the shackles of expectation, but it doesn't conform to this of average thinking, and that's a problem. Right, I'm just about done with this, because I need to do the usual tonal balancing thing. Using a small piece of charcoal, by the way, it's inhibiting and freeing at the same time, because I can't really draw that well with it. So I tend to, like on this, you can see it on this. You can see that this was done with this same piece of charcoal. So it has that sort of short, sharp mark making thing. These are not. Obviously, I can flow with it if I wanted to, but it has that short, sharp, sort of inscribed version, because it's so different to holding something that's a reasonable size. So you tend to be more accurate. More. I've known when I've drawn. We've done classes when I've had decent pieces of charcoal, and I've drawn, say, a lady like that, and it has been very precise in a way. But what's interesting really for me is that the way that the combination of the charcoal and the paper affect what I do so much. These bits of paper that I have on this board, which are all different, they kind of force me to do things in a different way, to respond in a different way. But I'm kind of aware of it at the time, and I have to quickly adjust accordingly, because I'm not. This won't do it in a certain way, or it won't make sweeping marks or controlled marks, because that's another thing as well. The smaller piece of charcoal, there's less control to it, which is why you get a lot of unexpected mark making with it. But as I said, it works well. I'm just going to sort out the tonal side of things. You can see again, one of the side effects of the short and sharp approach is you get a lot of and with charcoal as well, you get a lot of highlights that shouldn't be there. I quite like some of them, and I'll leave them in, but you're getting highlights that shouldn't be there. There is one on this side, but it's not that much of a highlight. But so you've got to adjust those. You can see how the shape changes. But that's me going back to talking about the balancing again of tones. But that's Yeah, right, done. Yeah, I'm sorry if I rambled on a bit. It's a difficult subject. You know, it sounds easy. Doing it your way sounds easy, but at the same time, it's difficult to explain the importance of finding your own way or doing your own way of doing it, especially when you're first starting out and you think, oh, it looks nothing like the face that I see before me, and that, if you're not careful, can be your downfall. You know, as soon as you admit to that, it can be and so you'll sign up for a few courses that show you how to do, you know, draw eyes and lips. You know, I saw one the other day, lips. I don't know how many lips this person had drawn on her face, and, you know. But as I say, that's kind of the problem with it. I think is that you don't know, and so you think the others do know, and you follow their lead, and really, all they've done is learn to replicate something. And you know, if that's your bag, then fine, but make sure it is. Right, I'm done. I'll love you, leave you, and I'm back on later. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a subject because I'm running out of words. I think that's the problem, and I'm just going to draw something and talk about what I'm doing when I'm drawing it. You know, why I'm drawing it and so on. Right.